is the meaning of life? What is your meaning of life? Everybody has a different meaning that they give life. So if you believe that life is a test, you're always going to be like, ooh, what am I making the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? Because you always believe that you're being tested. You always believe, and if you're doing a test, then you've got to always be right. What if you believe that life is a school? So even though you're always growing and upgrading and going up in levels and stuff, there's still always this fear of failing. So if you go around with the fear of failing, you might have this belief that life is a school. If you believe that life is a battle, you're going to have to win. You have to fight, you have to win, you have to be the best. Life is a battle. If you believe that life is a challenge, then doesn't matter what happens to you, you're always going to be like, yes, another challenge. I have to get past this obstacle. And life is going to keep throwing you these obstacles that you have to get over because your belief is life is a challenge. If you believe life is a party, you're not going to take much seriously. You're just going to be chilling and vibing, and life is a joy. What if you open yourself up to the possibility that maybe life is a game? How would you handle things if you thought life was a game? Let me explain this to you. So, we're all aware of there being a higher power, okay? Most religions created God to be this person sitting on a throne with a zapper in his hand, throwing lightning rods down at you. The esoteric view on it is that they call God the universe. Some people call God the creator. Some people call God the source. Doesn't matter what we want to call him. We're aware of this omnipotent power, this power that controls everything. So in our little tiny little human brains, we cannot conceive what God is. So let's just accept that God is a massive power that controls everything. So God already is everything, right? God is not lacking anything. God doesn't need anything. Let's call God the creator for the purpose of this video. So the creator doesn't need anything. It doesn't need anything from you, especially. You little tiny earth person, God doesn't need anything from you. Phew, what a relief, hey? Okay, so what if God created earth as a game for himself to just create, to just explore, to just keep creating? So nothing can ever be separate from God, right? So everything is part of God. It can't ever be separate. The earth is part of God, the universe is part of God, the ocean, the sun, everything is part of God. It can never be separate. So just in the same way, you are never separate from God. You are part of God, just like a drop of water is part of the ocean, or a ray of light is part of the sun. It can't be separated. It's part of the same thing. But now, this little earth game, you are like a little drop of the ocean that's coming down to earth to play this game, all right? You get given a spacesuit. This is your spacesuit, a body, okay? Because without your spacesuit, which has your 5 senses, you can see, you can hear, you can smell, you can touch, you can taste. Without these senses, you wouldn't know that you are in this game. Think about it. You can be blind, you can be deaf, but you'll still know that you're in this game. If you're lacking all 5 of your senses, you will literally not know that you are here. So we get given the spacesuit. The spacesuit lets you operate in this dimension called Earth, in this game. And through your senses, you experience this game. In the spacesuit, you get given a program. The program is your mind. Your program is also called your ego. And in this ego, it's written in your programming that you are nothing. You forget that you are part of God. Okay? You are nothing. You are a tiny little thing. You are just a spacesuit. That is all you are. You have absolutely no memory of being part of God. With this ego and this program comes, I am nothing, I am separate from everything, I am alone. It's total smallness. It makes you completely small. That is the purpose of the ego. And the purpose of the ego, or this mind or programming, we're going to call it ego for the purpose of this video, is to make you forget who you are and where you come from. It's to put you in a total illusion of who you are. So within this game of Earth, there's certain rules to make the game interesting and to make it challenging and to help you remember who you are. So the rules are everything exists in relationship to everything else. So everything is actually a mathematical equation. If you go and ask any scientist or mathematician who really knows about these things, they're going to tell you that everything in life works mathematically. There's a whole thing called the golden ratio. It's all about the size of your ear compared to the size of your head, and the size of your finger compared to the size between your elbow, and it's a whole ratio. You can go and Google that to find out more information about it. But every single thing on this earth is designed according to that mathematical ratio. So that's one of the rules of life, that everything is in relationship to everything else. So that means also that everything is energy. Energy is constantly changed and adapted according to the other energies around it. So all energy is constantly influencing one another. Even just being in a room, if you move your hand, air moves, which moves the heat and moves the cold and all those things. Your energy moves other people's energy. It moves the energy around you. If you go into the studying of how atoms work and all those things, you can really go and see how that works, how everything has energy, how everything is just atoms moving around in relationship to everything else. So that means that every single thing that we do affects every single thing around us. So every single thing around you affects you. Okay, that's also one of the rules of the game. So if you think about it, in actual fact, there are two yous. The you that you've always thought that you were is not the you. The you that you thought you were is the ego, which is your programming which tells you you are you. But in actual fact, you are a soul. You're a soul coming here to have a human experience. You are not a human having a spiritual experience. You are a spirit having a human experience. Get your mind around that one. You only start playing the game once you realize that you are playing the game. So once you start getting curious about the ego and its programming of you, and how this ego is actually determining the life that you're living. So before that, you're really just on autopilot. You are being run by your programming. You are just being lived. You are not actually living. You are being lived by your ego, by your automatic programming. So I always like to say that people who don't know that they're playing the game are actually just here as almost like robots until they wake up. So they're just here to be obstacles and challenges for us to get around. Because they're so run by their egos, they have no idea that they're actually a spirit. They're actually a soul. They're this amazing being having this experience. They're just totally blind. It's almost like explaining consciousness to somebody who's living so far outside the light is almost like explaining color to a person that's never been able to see. Where do you begin? How do you even explain to them that there's so much that they're not even aware of? Or like explaining music to a person that's never been able to hear. So it's almost like they're walking around with their eyes closed, and you're saying to them, just open your eyes, just open, you'll see that there's these amazing colors. And they're going, no, it's okay, no, I'm happy to keep my eyes closed. So being conscious and aware is not something that you can convince somebody to do. They have to go and seek it. They have to literally look for something more. They have to want to know more. So as soon as you start getting curious about why you're here and how to override this programming that you have, that is when you start living. That is your first step to starting to disempower the ego. So the ego's sole purpose is to help you survive. Okay, it's not to make you happy. It's to make you survive, and to do that, it needs to convince you that you need it. Because it doesn't want you to be overriding it. It wants to be running you. That's its purpose. So the ego is also always striving to avoid pain, because pain is going to destroy it. So it's always seeking pleasure to hide the pain and to avoid the pain. There are three main beliefs of the ego. The first one is, I am lacking, I'm nothing. The second one is, I need outside things to fulfill me. I need money, I need other people, I need things to make me feel something. I need things to identify me. I am nothing without an identity. And the third thing is, I am in control. The ego likes to think it's in control. And it's really, really not. But it really thinks it is. There are only two kinds of relationships that the ego can ever have with anything. The first one is attachment, and the second one is resistance. It needs to attach itself to things because that gives me identity. That gives me purpose. That gives me meaning. Or it needs to resist things. I'm not that. That gives me pain. That's not me. That's the only relationship that the ego can ever have with anything. Resistance or attachment. Because the ego is always needing something. It can't not need something. It's always needing something. So the two things it needs is validation, or it needs to avoid pain. Those are the only things it needs. It needs validation, or it needs to avoid pain. What I am not. It's always determining your identity. That is convincing you that you are. So that is your programming that you're born with. That is your programming that comes with the spacesuit, And that is the part of you that dies when your spacesuit dies. When your spacesuit expires, the ego dies with it. So what is left when you die? Who is the me that is left behind? That's a bit of a scary thought, isn't it? But it's actually not, because what's left behind is your soul. The you part of you is what's left behind. Not the identity part of you, not the person that thinks it's this or thinks it's that. You are part of the creator. You are part of everything. That is the part of you that does not die. So in the Christian viewpoint, they would explain it this way. They would say, God is the Father, right? But that just means that God is the creator. God is the one that is before you, the one that made you, the one that is the bigger version of you. God is the Father. And then the Christian viewpoint comes with this concept of Satan. Satan always makes you do things. Satan is always getting himself into your life to destroy your purpose, to take away anything good that you're trying to do, to take away anything good that's about to come your way. Satan is this competition to God. But if God is the creator and God is the everything and God is omnipotent, why would he create a Satan which goes into competition with him, who he cannot control and who he cannot overcome? And it always depicts like God is scared of Satan to some degree. How could that even be possible? And Satan is also this like humanized character that can really cause destruction, and he's walking around with this fork in his hand, and it's an ugly little being, however you want to picture him. But in actual fact, Satan is just a way of describing the ego. God created the ego to be in opposition to him, which means it is the competition for you to override your ego so that you can be whole in oneness again. That is the game. That is the purpose of the game. To put a blindfold on you, so eventually you have to take it off and you'll be able to see the real world and the real you. That is the purpose. So Satan is not this thing that's interfering with you all the time. It's your ego, your programming that's coming to interfere. That's making the illusion. That's stopping you from seeing the real you. That is what's stopping you. It's all your patterns. It's all your beliefs about your unworthiness, your beliefs about your insignificance, your beliefs about not being good enough. So the purpose of this game is to override the ego, right? So to become one with your creator again. And the way to do this is to be in a state of love, to be in a state of gratitude, to be in a state of surrender, of letting go, of not trying to be in control. It's the ego that wants control, not your soul. Your soul doesn't care. Your soul is in acceptance. Everything is meant to be as it is. So the way to move up in levels in this program is firstly to become curious about your ego, to question things that it tells you. When your ego tells you that you're unworthy, that you're insignificant, that you're not good enough, you need to start questioning these things and overriding it, because that programming is automatic. It's always going to come in. If you give it a space, it's going to come in. If you're not in a state of consciousness and you're not in a state of remembering who you are, the ego is going to have free reign. It's always going to fill in that space. So it's always going to come back and tell you how unworthy you are, how small you are. It wants to keep you in your smallness. It doesn't want you in your bigness. Because if you're in your power and you're in your big self, then the ego no longer has power over you and you no longer need it. And its programming is not written that way. Its programming is written for self-sustainability. Your programming is written to survive, to make the body survive, and to make you small. Another way to level up in this game is to create a good relationship with yourself. Because if you don't have a loving relationship with yourself, you are incapable of having a loving relationship with everything else. Because everything is a projection of you. Everything is a mirror of you. So if you are constantly telling yourself bad things about yourself, if you're being a bully to yourself, if you are in a state of depression or anxiety because of things you believe about yourself, then you cannot have a relationship with anybody else. Not a constructive relationship, not an expanding relationship. You can only have a relationship where you stay small. So part of leveling up in the game is to have a good relationship with yourself, to have a loving relationship with yourself. So there's two ways to level up in the game. The first one is to have a loving relationship with yourself, and the second one is to constantly be curious about the ego and to override it piece by piece by piece. And that's how you become the creator of your own life. You have to tap into God's love. You have to tap into God's power. That is the only way to become the creator. So that gives you so much true power, not the kind of fake power that the ego gives you. This is more like a true power, like a realization that anything can happen. All abundance is available to you. All love is available to you. All happiness is available to you. All peace is available to you. You've just got to choose it. And you have to choose to override the ego, which is lying in your ear. It's like that little devil sitting on your shoulder, telling you in your ear all day things that it wants you to believe to keep you small. You are part of God's love. That's why they say God loves you, but it's the energy of love. You are part of everything. You just need to tap into it. And the more you tap into this energy of letting go, of being in the state of love, of being in the state of do no harm, the more free you become, and the less you feel like you have to control everything, and the more you feel like you have control over life. And things are not just happening to you. And the less you go and spiral into your mind of all these things that you don't want to be, and all these things that you think give you identity, and you realize you don't need any kind of identity that anybody can give you, or any kind of identity that the world can give you. You already are everything. You are total abundance. You are total love. You are perfect. You are made in God's image. You are a part of God. Isn't that just incredibly relieving to know that? Doesn't that just make you feel so safe and so protected and so free? So the purpose of the game is to remember this more and more and more, and eventually to be able to override the ego. In the end of the day, it's not about being Mr. Nice Guy. It's not about denying any bad feelings that you have. It's not about living in a la-di-da world where nothing ever goes wrong. It's just about accepting that you are a spirit having a human experience, and you're here to play the game. And sometimes you got to play the role of the game. You're here to play the game, so play it. Experience all the emotions, experience all the things there is to experience all the challenges, but don't get sucked into the spiraling of it. Don't go and sit in that pit of sorrow, feeling that you're unworthy and unlovable, and depression and anxiety and addictions.